Thank you so much for clicking on this video. Now, by the title, you'll see this video is really about sharing your story, or for those who want to share their story publicly. Now, for those who don't know, my name is Francesca McDowell. I'm the author of the book Surviving Spiritual Abuse: Hope, Healing and Restoration for Those Who've Experienced Hurt. And I've also founded Restart, which is a project I'll tell you some more about as we go on. Okay, so by the title of the book, you'll know that that's my story. Yeah, I experienced spiritual abuse in a church context and I've written about it. And so, in me sharing publicly, I've had other people say, I also want to share my story. How did you go about it? Like, what are some tips? What's helpful? And so, this is why I'm doing this video. So, for some context, in February 2020, again, I shared this story publicly as well. I was in church and I literally saw the word surviving spiritual abuse. And I knew inside of me that that is a book that God wanted me to write. Now, I was currently writing my first book with a business partner at the time. And I always thought that my own solo book would be more around encouragement. Yeah. So I didn't necessarily receive this insight with excitement and enthusiasm. I was kind of like, that's a bit not really what I want to do. But I really believe that that is what God was telling me to do. And so, fast forward in April, I started writing my book and I just started writing. I didn't necessarily have a plan, I just started writing. And as the months went on, I kind of got a plan together and really had inspiration as to how to share my story. Now, the book is Surviving Spiritual Abuse: Hope, Healing and Restoration for Those Who've Experienced Hurt. And so, my first advice would be really check the motivating factor. Like, what's your why for sharing your story publicly? Whether that be on video or on social media or in a book or on a podcast, it doesn't matter the place, but what's your motivating reason? What's your factor? So, for me, it is really to demonstrate that there is hope, healing, and restoration for those who've experienced hurt, as well as to educate and to share from that perspective versus um, doing it so that I can call out the people who caused me hurt and damage. It's also not done so I can bring shame to the church or disrepute. Those weren't the reasons. It wasn't to expose the individuals or the organization. It was really around those who had gone through this or are currently in this, and to help them give language to their experiences and also demonstrate how God can heal and restore. Yeah. So the first thing to consider is, what is your why? Okay. And then you want to really make your intentions clear to your audience. One thing I've learned about being in this spiritual abuse or surviving spiritual abuse community, everyone has very different intentions. And so we're not to assume that everybody is coming from the same place of wanting to go on a healing journey, wanting to be restored in their faith and their personal relationship with Christ, and wanting to, at some point, hopefully come back into church community. There are some people who have a very different intention. And so when you're sharing your story, as well as knowing why you're doing it for yourself, make your intention clear to your audience. So let them know, I'm sharing this so that you too can receive help, or I'm sharing this so that you know that you're not alone, or whatever your intention is, do make it very, very clear. Okay. The next thing I would say is be wary of safeguarding. Okay. So safeguarding yourself and safeguarding other people. If you have experienced abuse, spiritual abuse, or other sorts of abuse, depending on the situation and whether you have still got connection with the perpetrators, you want to keep yourself safe. And that looks differently for everybody. And so for some of us, we've shared anonymously. So I didn't name the organization or the individuals who were involved with what I went through. In the book, I also have 6 other people who share their stories of spiritual abuse. And this ranges from physical assault, sexual abuse, we've got financial abuse, manipulation, control. We've got the whole spectrum. But all of them, they again don't name the organization or the individuals. And that is to safeguard themselves and also other people who may in some way be related to their abusers. Now, I would say for some people, naming their abusers need to be done in a legal setting, right? This is, yeah, we have to be very mindful of the structures in which we live, but safeguarding yourself and safeguarding other people. The other one of the reasons why I don't share publicly the name of the organization is because I think it's very easy to then be tunnel focused and say, well, it's that type of church or it was those types of people who do this. Whereas we know, particularly spiritual abuse, happens in every faith denomination, in so many communities and in homes as well. And so if we, or I felt if I were to name the organization, well, then we just start looking at as a type and it actually goes across so many different spectrums. But in the midst of everything, please keep yourself safe. Okay. And as an add on to that as well, take care of you. You know, when you've gone through abuse of any sort, it's tough. But the healing journey is also really, really tough. And I know for me, when I started writing my story in black and white, it was really, really overwhelming. In fact, the publishing of my book, which came out in 2021, was a few months behind schedule because every time the publisher sent it back to me to read and proofread and go through it, I just struggled with reading it. And I had a lot of compassion for the younger version of myself who went through what she went through. And so, keeping you in the midst of it, please take care of yourself. You know, and again, whatever that looks like for you, you definitely need a support system around you. So, other people who understand what you've gone through, who are going to support you and nurture you, because you may come up against criticism and negative. In fact, let me tell you, you will come up against negativity and criticism because some people don't like when we speak our stories and our truths. They just don't like it. They don't embrace it. They believe that we're kind of, doing it to harm the church, and we're not. I know for me, the reason I believe God called me to do this was to really go and help those who are so hurt and damaged by their experiences of being in church that they're not, no longer in church. And I want to tell them and share with them that I get it, but what God has healed me, and He's also healed me in community. I also share my story to those who are currently going through things can realize that it's not okay, that their value placed on their life was so great that they shouldn't sit in and stay in an abusive environment. Yeah. That all my motivations I've made clear, I've made my intentions clear, but still I've had some people who will criticize and give me negative feedback. And so, if I didn't have a support system around me, if I wasn't in a stable place myself, it would have made the journey that much harder. Okay. Because it is really painful to share and hearing other people's stories. Because as you share, they'll share back with you. And there are times when, as people have shared, it's just been almost triggering because it's like, wow, this I can relate so entirely. And so, good counsel, wise counsel, therapy if it's appropriate, but a support system is really, really needed. Also, make sure that you share when you are at a good place to share. If you've gone through a traumatic situation and for whatever reason you're currently going through some other challenges, you may not have the emotional resilience to share in a way that keeps you safe and that also can impact the audience or your listeners or your viewers, keeping them at the center as well. And so I personally believe that there should be a period of time in between what you've gone through and your healing and sharing, because if it's so, like if it happened 2 weeks ago and now you want to share with the world, I would struggle to see how well we are and how much we've healed and we're secure in that place to share. Now, for some people, maybe they can. Yeah. I personally didn't share my story for like 8 to 10 years publicly, partly because I was definitely healing, but also I had I didn't have a conviction to share it. And also I wasn't on reflection, I definitely was not in the place to share my story. I didn't know, if I knew then what I knew now, oh my gosh, absolutely, I would never have felt aware about the time frame, because it's incredibly challenging, and it's when you're a compassionate person and people share their pain with you, you've got to be able to hold them safely. Now, I'm a qualified coach, and I deliver therapeutic coaching based on my lived experience and my coaching qualification, but I'm not a counselor. Yeah. So I don't support people from that aspect. I do it from a coaching element. And at the same time, if we're in a group setting and people are sharing, we have to be able to listen and hold safe space for them to share as well, which is why you being in a good place and you having a support system is absolutely negative. And I'll round up by saying that stories are powerful. Like, the ability to share a story that can transform someone's life is absolutely amazing. The stories that we share, even the most painful ones, can still connect us to other people, and at the same time also inspire hope for change and healing and deliverance and everything else that is good. So if you are ready to share your story, absolutely, I would really encourage you to share, but do it from a safe place. Have a good support system. Be mindful that people may be negative and criticize you and what you've shared, and don't take it personally. One thing I learned is that although I wrote this book, although this has my name on it, yeah, I am the author and this is my story. This is not me. I am a separate person to my book. And so if people, or when people have criticized my book, I've taken it less personally because I realize it's not me as a person. Yeah, the Francesca you see in front of you is separate from the book that she wrote. And also, people will critique it for their own reasons. Maybe it's too close for comfort for them, or maybe they feel that too many people can call out spiritual abuse or church hurt, and it's not fair on church leadership. So, yeah, those are some things that I will say to be mindful of. And lastly, and most importantly, please do pray. Pray about when you should be sharing and how you should be sharing, and also what you should be sharing. I wrote a whole book, but I did not include certain elements in that book of what I experienced, because there were too many other people involved that I felt it would be unfair of them to be have that story shared. But also, some of it I didn't really see how it would benefit the audience in certain respects. So again, pray about what exactly you should share. Now, on a one-to-one or out of the public arena, I do share more in depth if I feel it's appropriate and it's right for the situation. But wisdom must also prevail, because once you put your story out there, it's out there and anybody can do anything with it. And so, for the sake of my own family as well, I did use some discretion with what I shared. Although I have shared some really personal things, which, if you've read the book, you will know them by now. And I did have this moment of, like, oh, take a deep breath. People around the world are going to know that you went through this very traumatic situation. And I had to be okay with it because I knew that there was a greater purpose. And I remember having a conversation with a friend who was definitely one of the people in my support system, and she said, "Fran, there may be people, in their 60s and 70s or even older, who have gone through the exact thing that you've gone through, but have never told anybody because they didn't think that somebody would believe them, or they didn't even understand what they went through. And by reading it in your book, that now gives them an opportunity for understanding and healing." And when she said that, I felt like it brought so much clarity to the book and that particular chapter. And to be fair, in the book, I even say, this is the one chapter that I didn't know if I was going to write, but if you're reading it, I guess it made the final edit, because I wanted to be honest and vulnerable and raw with that particular scenario, and really address that this is not an easy thing to write about, but I'm so aware that this could be many people's experiences. And yeah, that was the inspiration to really share it. So please stay prayerful, yeah, as you write, share, prepare all of that. And also pray for the people who will be listening or reading your story. Pray that what they need to get out of it or learn, that they would do so as well. And trust that God will give you peace, even though it's hard and even though there can be so much overwhelm. You still want to make sure and you're moving forward with the peace of God, as in Philippians 4, verses 6 to 7. So, what I do now is I have the book, and it has been read by people in multiple countries. And so I also deliver therapeutic coaching as a group and one to one for those who have experienced spiritual abuse. I host Let's Talk, which is a bi monthly event on Zoom. And it's literally, as the title said, it's Let's Talk About Spiritual Abuse. And so that's a free event that I host, giving people time and space to share. If you search Let's Talk About Spiritual Abuse, it'll come up on Eventbrite. Alternatively, I will put a link to all of the things that we do somewhere around this video, and hopefully that can help you as well. All the very best in your sharing journey. Remember that God is with you and He has you, and keep healing. God bless you. This is Francesca from Restart.